wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to extend you a warm welcome to our event, Seminars and Kuliah Umum, or SinarKU, held by Equitas, a critical transformation for our creation, poverty and equality working group, in collaboration with the Laboratory of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah. Today's SinarKU session will be featuring a remarkable Professor Asadul from Monash University, a chief investigator from the Australian Research Council Center of Excellence for Violence Against Women. Our deepest gratitude goes for both our participants here and our participants who have joined online. For the next 2 hours, we will learn together about our main theme of forced displacement, mental health, and child development, evidence from the Rohingya refugees. I am Quarina, one of the assistants of Equitas working group, and I will be your master of ceremony for today. Before we begin, I would like to take a few moments to explain the rules of the games for today's event. First, this event is carried out in a hybrid manner, offline and online. Second, this event has 2 main sessions, a 60-minute lecture followed by a question and answer sessions for 15 minutes. Third, for online participants, please rename your Zoom username to your institution name underscore your full name. I repeat, your institution name underscore your full name. All online participants are expected to mute their microphones while the event is being conducted, except they are asked to unmute by the moderator or the speaker. Fourth, if an offline participant has a question related to the material being delivered, the participant can ask the question during the Q&A sessions by raising their hand. For online participants, they can type the question through the chat box or ask directly by using the raise hand feature and then turning on the mic. Fifth, all participants are expected to be polite, courteous, and does not mention any discriminatory element in conveying questions. 6. Participants are entitled to get an A certificate if they participate in SinarKU until the end and fill the attendance and feedback which will be given at the end of the event. Without further ado, let's start the session by inviting everyone to stand up for our anthem, Indonesia Raya, followed by singing our hymn Gadjah Mada. For all attendees, please rise.
Indonesia
Thank you, everyone, and please be seated. For the next agenda, we will for you to have an exceptional speaker who will give lectures in a paper presentation, namely Forced Displacement, Mental Health and Child Development, Evidence from the Rohingya Refugees, Professor Asadul Islam. Before we go into sessions, please let me introduce our moderator for today, Ibu Qisha Quarina. Qisha is a lecturer from the Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah. In 2009, she earned her bachelor's degree from Economics Universitas Indonesia and earned her master's degree in 2012 of Master of Science at the University of Sussex, United Kingdom, and earned her Ph.D. at Manchester University. Besides, her research interests focused on development economics, labor economics, education economics, and population economics. Currently, she is entrusted as the coordinator of microeconomics desk work under Economics Lab at FEB UGM. Without further ado, we will hand over today's event to be immediately hosted by Qisha. To Qisha, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, and also students. Well, mostly my students from my development economics class. Well, this is a very exciting event, and welcome to all of you to SinarKU guest lecture series hosted by the Laboratory Economics under the Faculty of Economics and Business, Universitas Gadjah Mada. My name is Qisha, as warmly introduced by Grace, and I will be your moderator for today's event. And this afternoon, we are delighted to welcome our distinguished guest lecturer, Professor Asadul Islam. So, can everyone give a big round of applause for Professor Asad? Professor Asad, would you please accompany me on the stage here? Thank you very much. How are you, Professor?
Thank you.
Right, I'm fine, thank you. So today, Professor Asad will be presenting about his paper, one of his papers, I believe. The title is Forced Displacement, Mental Health and Child Development, Evidence from the Rohingya Refugees. But before we start our seminar and our main event for listening to Professor Asad's presentation, I would like to introduce his profile a little bit and apologize if there's any mistakes. This is what I got from the committee. So Professor Asad Islam is the director of the Center for Development Economics and Sustainability, CEVAW, and a professor of economics at Monash University. And he is also affiliated professor at CEVAW MIT. He is a chief investigator for the ARC, Center of Excellence for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and his research uses conducting field work utilizing methodologies such as RCD to evaluate effectiveness of policies and programs, and he has published widely in leading economics and related journals. So I think that will be very much beneficial for our students here, Professor. Right, so I guess without further ado, I think we have around 1 hour for your presentations, and then we have the Q&A afterwards if that works for you. So without further ado, let's give a big welcome to Professor and listen to Professor Asadul's presentation.
Thank you very much for having us. I have here with me my two distinguished colleagues who are part of an important mission where we have a Australian Research Council Center of Excellence, and we are chief investigators. We came here to do some research related to violence against women. My distinguished colleagues are here, so I have invited one of my colleagues here to talk about that research that we will be doing in Indonesia and might be potentially useful for students, and hopefully we might attract some kind of interest from colleagues here as well to do some collaboration. So I will, after my presentation, I will request Astik, my colleague from Quarina University, to come here, and then Professor Qisha is here. She is a distinguished colleague, and she has spent her life working on mental health issues. At least I'm talking about, so I'm a bit nervous in front of talking to her. But she will also be speaking on issues of this and also our Center of Excellence. Okay. With this one, I will start, and I would like to thank you, University Gadjah Mada, for hosting us, and particularly here at FEB for this talk. And I'm going to talk about an important issues of concern. I choose this paper intentionally to think about the context that we are facing in the world right now, and why in Gaza is going on, refugees and issues are becoming more prominent, and the violence, the extremism that we have been witnessing actually have some consequences, not only in this context in Rohingya refugee, and I believe a lot of Rohingya refugees are also in Indonesia, and also given the current world order is going on, so this has important implication for many other places as well. Okay, so this project we are working, as I said, is a part of a large project in Bangladesh, in the Rohingya refugee camp, to try to improve the well-being of the people that actually are forced to flee from their country. Okay? And so this is an attempt to improve their well-being in general. Okay? And here in this project, we focused on mothers and children well-being, and in particular the mental health aspect of the mothers, and try to understand how that can help improve for mothers and the children who are very young. So this is I have some collaborators, all of them are my junior, some of them are students of a junior college actually from Bangladesh. So the thing that I was talking about, the refugees, the refugee population is huge in number, more than 100 million in the world now. And 1/3 of the refugees are basically a almost stateless population in many ways. And 85% are living in developing countries. So, in many ways, sometimes when we hear the developed country portray sometimes that is their problem actually. And most of the refugees are hosted by developing countries. So it's a problem for the developing countries. And refugees face a number of problems, both pre and post migration. Okay? Pre-migration issues are there because they face number of torture, violence, and the post-migration when they come and try to settle. The settling process is not easy, and a lot of other barriers for them to settle in. Okay? So they go through a lot of issues, and we are trying to see whether we can help a little bit. Okay? And we focus on the mental health, particularly because we thought anything that happens on the mother's mental health is likely to transmit the children's mental health, the children's cognitive and non-cognitive developmental outcome. And so the idea is to try to understand how we can actually help improve this trauma, anxiety, and depression that these women have, and also then actually it directly helps this woman and then subsequently their children. So we use a method called randomized control trial. Some of you might be familiar. Is basically we are trying to understand what happens when we are giving this intervention. And in many cases, because participation decisions are not really decided by us, but decided by the people who we target. So therefore, there are some issues that arise, whether people who are mentally very poor, they are the people are participating, or people who are mentally already in a good situation are participating. So there are situations that can actually predict whether you want to participate in a program or not. And we don't know many of those situations. Okay? Some of these can be maybe observable characteristics like their age, their education, but some of these are not observable. Okay? Their willingness to participate in this kind of program. So that's why we use randomized control trial to try to understand the people who we actually randomly assign this intervention, how they perform compared to the people who are randomly excluded from the program. So that's why the purpose of the random. So we focus on this Rohingya refugee people. I think most of you already know these people that we focus are living currently in Bangladesh. About 1 million people are living now, and we focus on the women and children. I explained to you, and we work with the largest NGO in the world called BRAC in Bangladesh. BRAC has presence not only in Bangladesh but many other countries as well. So they work in the camp to help not only on these issues but on many other aspects in the camp. And what we do, we actually offer them a psychosocial intervention. You can think of is very, and I will explain that to you. It's basically psychoeducation and psychotherapy together, combining it, and a very light task, but a very long period, about a year, and also offered by some para-counselors, given that there are limited resources in terms of the psychologists and others available. We want it to be more practical, and that can be scaled up. So we use, and I'll explain how did we do that. So our paper's objective is a multifaceted program focusing on mothers and children, and to try to improve whether we can help improve mothers' well-being and also physical, socio-emotional, and cognitive developmental outcome of children. And then look at whether how this transmission from mother to children happens. Okay. So, I mean, when we write economics paper, we try to justify how our paper is related to the work that we have already been completed and what additional contribution we are actually putting up in these papers. I don't want to focus too much in this, just to try to tell you that there has been some studies focusing on mental health issues, early childhood developmental outcome, and Jane here is one of the pioneers on both of these issues actually. What his contribution here is basically bringing all this in one single intervention where we have both, mental health and child development together. And we are able to examine the intergenerational aspects from mother to children. And in a setting which is a refugee context, which has been rarely examined, and also in using randomized control trial, this has been done in the refugee settings. So that's the contribution. So Rohingyas are, as I said, is a stateless population, one of the most persecuted population in the world. The recent wave of Rohingyas came in 2017. Among them, almost 250,000 population living in a very small land in Bangladesh. It's a very congested area, hill tracts area, and before that there were some refugees already from Myanmar, but this wave of population were huge in numbers, and currently there are about 1 million Rohingya refugees living in that particular area. And they faced a number of sexual violence, physical violence, and also abuse and intimate partner violence in the camp as well. And 80,000 children in that camp are estimated to have severe mental distress, and they are also suffering for poor malnutrition and anemia, stunting, whatever child health related problem you can imagine they have. And in fact, in our baseline survey, we found that about half of them are having this kind of mental health issues and other problems. So this program that I'm going to explain is developed by RAP, the NGO that I talked about, and they have a special division in IED, Institute of Education and Development, and they work with the counselor or psychologists to develop this program. And we actually have this psychosocial education program over a year. It was a very low-cost intervention, and I will explain what this involved. I don't know whether I could use this. Can you click the photo? Yeah. No. Does the photo come? Okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. So basically, this was a 1-hour session focusing on first part on mothers, second part on the children. The first 15 minutes is a group session. About 7-8 mothers will meet and with a counselor, para-counselor, and they will have a first 15 minutes to try to brief each other how things happen and some kind of more relaxing and other environmental situations. And then we focus on the 20 minutes for their own well-being, the mother's well-being, how they can improve their life, what is going on in their family life, and dealing with this individual situation. The next 20 minutes is for children, again, how to interact with children, between mothers and children, and it's in a play-like situation so that they can actually have some kind of fun. Because in the refugee setting, they really don't have any space to even play together and have kind of an atmosphere where they can actually freely talk and discuss. And playing with children, these children are actually 0 to 2 years old, so young children, and the next 5 minutes is usually what they can do for next 1 week at home to try to interact and develop their own well-being and also for their children. So, and we worked in this camp, and so it's a huge area in terms of location, there's a hilly area, and 17 camps located in this area, and also in each camp there is called blocks, like an area, a neighborhood you can think of. And so because we are thinking about randomized control trial, we have to place a cluster randomized control trial. So the clustering is done at the block level. So blocks are like within camp, there are a small area. Okay? So some blocks get women and children in some blocks are selected for the intervention. In other blocks, we did not offer anything. To try to understand what happens when we give this intervention to this program. Okay. So, and this was done randomly to make sure that there is no selection bias. Okay. So the one that received and then one that did not receive are basically by chance through lottery. Okay. So lottery actually determines whether one block will be under treatment, another block will be under treatment. So we had about 251 blocks, either for the treatment or control, and 137 of them received the treatment, or 140 in the control. Okay. The mother-child session, so there are, in each block there are 14 mother children, and so that means there are 2 sessions. In each session there are 7 mothers and children in one session with the para-counselor giving this service. So about 3,500 mother-child were involved in this trial. In terms of the timeline, so we started this program in October 2019 after a survey, baseline survey that month before in September. But then in March 2020, COVID hit, and we actually had to rethink how we actually do that. So the first 24 weeks we conducted the intervention through in-person group session, 7 mothers with 7 children and a para-counselor. But then, because of the COVID, we could not do in-person intervention, so it was done through over the phone. But again, because it was done over the phone, it has to be done individually. And so we use basically phone-based intervention, the same intervention but over the phone, and conducted individually with the mothers. But because the first 24 weeks was done with the same para-counselor, it was not difficult for para-counselor to connect over the phone because they know each other before. They knew each other before, and it was easy for the counselor to tell what is going on and what we can do as well. So in terms of the results, what we find is that mother's mental health improved significantly. it will look like, so these are results we report usually in standard deviation, but if I need to tell you in terms of the percentage, the improvement is between 25% to 35% in terms of the mental health improvement. So trauma or depression, depending on the outcome that you are looking at. Okay. And also when we look at the mother's well-being, we see that it improved their happiness and belongingness, but there was no significant improvement in terms of their aspirations. And that is probably, because of the situation that was going through, they didn't have any better hope for when they can get out of the campus valley. That could be one of the reasons that probably we did not see impact on their aspirations. When we looked at the child's mental health, again, the negative territory means it's good. Mental health situation actually improved. And again, we see that in child's mental health, both in terms of the trauma and depression, improve, and child developmental outcome is communication skills, fine motor, problem solving, social skills. They all went up. It actually became better, with the exception of the fine motor skill that we did not see much improvement. So mother's mental health, child mental health improved. And then we try to understand whether actually mother mental health and child mental health become aligned to each other. So in other words, if mother's mental health improves, did it improve also the child mental health? And we do see that actually that happens. When the mother's mental health improves, child mental health actually also improves. The difference between mothers and children mental health reduced significantly due to our intervention. And then we looked at the channel, okay? How much children's mental health are happening due to improvement in mother's mental health. Because we give intervention directly to children, but also directly to mothers. And some of this transmission from mother to children would happen. And so we did what we call a mediation analysis to try to understand how much we can explain the children's mental health that are happening due to improvement in mother's mental health. What we see is that half of the child trauma can be explained by if we can eliminate the mother's trauma. Okay? And 1/3 of child depression can be improved if the mother's trauma can be improved. Okay? So mother's trauma explains a lot. So the trauma here is related to the things that they experienced before coming to Bangladesh, because the trauma was mostly related to the violence and exposure that they had in Myanmar. Okay? So the point I'm trying to say is that actually the genocide that they faced, the trauma that they experienced had large consequences not only on them, but also on their children. And if we can help improve their trauma, that actually helps not only for these women, but also to their children as well. For those of you, the young students, we call now machine learning approach. We did some machine learning technique to try to understand who are the people benefited most. Okay? Because typically what we do is some kind of heterogeneity analysis, whether it is boy, girl, improve, or is it poor people or rich people, or sometimes we do this kind of heterogeneous analysis. So with the advancement of this recent technique, now people are doing a lot of machine learning approach. And what we did is we asked the data to tell us which group of the population, without actually imposing whether it is boy or girl or any other group. Because of the way machine learning works, it actually gives you the which variable predicts you more in terms of the improvement in outcome that we observe actually. And we do see that people in case of mothers who had poor mental health, high exposure to violence in Myanmar, and high exposure to abuse in camp, less educated and older are the people who benefited most. And this is more or less similar for the children as well. So I'll just conclude with this. It is a community delivered, very cost effective intervention. We just spend $1 per mother child per week. So it's like over 44 weeks, we spend $45 per mother child. So relatively least expensive, and we actually have expanded this program. After the intervention is completed, we found it's effective. The drug has expanded this program, and last time I checked with them, more than 17,000 mother and children are benefiting from this program. So before I conclude, actually, I wanted to show you some pictures, actually, how this program happened, actually. So this program coming up. So you can see this mother and children are playing like this kind of situation that we created. Okay? And then other one that I want to show is the blocks. It's within camp, there are blocks. That one that is darker here are the ones that are under treatment, and those not darker under control. Okay? And also the other thing. So economics paper has a lot of tables and things in the appendix. So these are in the appendix. So I'm just trying to give you some flavor. Actually, you need to do a lot of work. Okay, and if you are interested, you will see in the paper we have done a lot of things. I cannot explain everything here, but everything is explained there. So anyway, I will finish here. I will probably. Maybe we take Q&A at the end, but I would now request Ashtik to come over here and to talk about our Center of Excellence for Elimination of Violence Against Women. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So, are you going to swap, or I think we just add chairs if that's okay? So everyone can see who are presenting. Is that fine? So Prof. Asad is fine. You can take a seat, and I'll get the right one because I'm the moderator. So.
So thank you very much, Joseph, for the interesting presentation. It's very heartening and the outcome of this study. Thank you very much for having us here. It's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to meet you all and to be able to tell you about the Center of Excellence that we are just starting to establish with a 7-year research agenda with the ultimate objective of producing research that serves to eliminate violence against women. So, of course, all of you will know that violence against women is a big problem. It's highly prevalent around the world. It's one of those problems that persists in both developed and developing countries, and so unlike many problems that get better with economic development, this doesn't seem to be one of these problems. It's prevalent in many different forms. There's increasing awareness of the problem, but the solutions remain very limited. So we have been very fortunate to receive funding from the Australian Research Council to establish a 7-year research program, a multidisciplinary program that brings together 13 chief investigators across a range of disciplines, including psychology, Professor Qisha here working from a public health space, the Professor Islam and myself from economics, our other colleagues working across a range of other disciplines, including criminology, social work, political science, and indigenous studies. And our aspiration is to bring the knowledge that has been isolated so far in our individual disciplines and try to see whether we can come up with something that would offer some clear sense of impact. And Professor Islam's today's study is very inspiring in that regard. So we want to do more of that kind of research that would then be possible to sort of use to eliminate this problem. Okay, so this is a research program. However, this will be doing a lot more than this, being the Center of Excellence. So what we are trying to do is to establish a research network at a regional level that will also support the translation of knowledge. We will be looking to have open access data in this space, and we also are looking to build capacity, especially for researchers and students who have interest in this space. In fact, if any of you here are interested in this sort of problem, we welcome you to come and talk to us if you would like to do a PhD, especially in this space. I'll talk about specifically our interest in Indonesia in a second, but before I do that, here is what the sort of sketch of our research program looks like. So we would like to understand the causes of violence. So this is here represented in purple with pillar 1. And here the three of us are actually representing this pillar here. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail in a second about what we are doing under this pillar. But it goes beyond that. And the research program overall also tries to understand the context, specific context where violence happens. So, for example, some of our colleagues are looking at situations of conflict or situations of natural disasters, or more recently the pandemics. We know from various pieces of evidence that these are situations which trigger violence against women. So there is an ambition to understand more about that. And we have a group of colleagues who are looking at responses, looking, for example, at sort of frontline practices, legal responses to the problem, and trying to come up with some innovations in that space. And finally, this is a research center that has a strong indigenous approach in everything it does, and we have indigenous leaders among the chief investigators who are guiding us in that space, as well as conducting research that addresses violence against women among indigenous communities. Okay, so we are at the very least sort of regional group, but also with partner investigators all around the world. Our focus is truly our focus is on the Indo-Pacific region, and the field work specifically that the three of us will be conducting focuses on Indonesia, as well as Vietnam and Fiji. So we will be looking to do panel surveys in these three countries. So we will be looking to do field experiments in these countries, and a lot of also work with existing secondary data sets as much as possible. We have partner organizations across a range of sectors. So we have national bodies in Australia, we have governmental partners, but we also have all the way to international organizations as partner organizations for our center, including the Asia Foundation, UNFPA. Okay, so before I conclude, let me give you just a little bit more detail on the causes pillar, where Professor Jane Fisher, Professor Asadul, and myself are working. So at the first instance, we are trying to, so we would like to understand the nature, prevalence, and determinants of experiences of violence against women better than it was done before. To that end, we will be designing and conducting panel surveys in the three countries, inclusive of Indonesia. And not only these kind of surveys will give us the opportunity to understand the violence better through some innovations that we will introduce into the design of the surveys in terms of measuring the violence, the way we approach measuring violence, the types of violence that we measure, but they will ultimately be also serving as the baseline and line surveys for the field experiments. Then we have work stream 2, which is based at Curtin University, where I'm based, and this work stream will be specifically looking at institutions. And by institutions, we mean a lot of different things. So we mean formal policies and laws, but we also mean informal institutions in the form of social norms that can either contribute to violence or protect, serve as a protective space for violence. We will be looking to engage with a range of institutions that are relevant for violence against women, both directly and indirectly. And a lot of the work under this work stream will be towards natural experiments for policy evaluation. So evaluating some, at the first instance, policies that have been implemented in this space and that lend themselves for robust policy evaluation exercise. And then finally, we will be looking to beyond sort of going through policy evaluation to observational data. We will be introducing some interventions to run price control trials. And a lot of this work will be focusing on Indonesia, and perhaps through this discussion we'll have an opportunity to tell you more about this, but this is really, in essence, what we'll be doing under the work stream. We're designing some what looks like promising interventions in the spirit of Asad's earlier presentation, and trying to evaluate if they make, in a hope that they make an impact for preventing and ultimately eliminating violence. So that's really it in summary, but looking forward to engaging more with all of you. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, Professor Qisha, would you like to add anything? No worries, we've got chairs. I know it's the election time in Indonesia, but no worries, we've got lots of chairs and academic institutions.
Well, it's my great pleasure to join my colleagues here and have an opportunity for a conversation with all of you. I think the wonder of a big research program like this is it allows us to step beyond the familiar, step beyond the methods which we're accustomed to using, the theoretical frameworks that we're familiar with, the ways of interpreting data. And I have already experienced that with my wonderful colleagues here who bring different disciplinary backgrounds to mine, but to an area in which we have very common shared interests. Violence against women and girls is a really obdurate problem. And as Asdik spoke to us, we know that this transcends national boundaries and it's not confined within populations just to one group. And great efforts have been made to try to address this problem, certainly to increasing the services that are available to people who are victims of violence. But I think it's a shock to all of us that it continues. It continues at high prevalence. Always when I speak about this, I know there will be those of you here who have had a lived experience or who have witnessed this, and this is potentially a difficult topic to hear about and talk about. But I'm truly committed to the idea that this opportunity for collaborative work across disciplinary boundaries and among neighbouring countries is where we might find effective solutions. I hope some of you have your interest piqued. You think you might want to come do a PhD with us, or you might be interested in some way of working in this field. As we've heard, we are really very keen to hear from you. We've had a terrific meeting the last 2 days with colleagues from the Law, Gender and Society group here at University of Gadjah, and we already identified many areas of mutually beneficial learning. So I hope there's an opportunity for some questions and conversation.
And just if I can also add that, because this is a multidisciplinary center, and sometimes I hear, especially in economics, we are trained in a way that we think, oh, what you are going to do in the violence against women research. So I wanted to clarify actually, because we are focused on mainly tool-based research, we learn a lot of techniques, and we apply techniques in different fields, right? So then the violence against women, now here my role as an economist, I'm a development economist. It is also an economist. So we are spending our next 7 years of our life, hopefully, to try to understand what policies and programs can be effectively executed to address the violence. So, and our role as economists would be to try to understand the cost effectiveness of the program, okay? How we can actually use more low-cost, scalable intervention to help people in this area. Okay? So economists have an important role to play. Plus, the other aspect that you're thinking is, we work in a large data set, and with the advancement of new techniques like machine learning, the techniques that have been out there already, we can use the large data to actually analyze what is happening. Okay? Then we can design the program based on what is going on in the field. Okay? And a lot of things we hear anecdotally, but sometimes we really cannot establish the science, or we really cannot really produce a concrete evidence. Our role will be to build or knowledge based on what we already know, but not only know, just adding knowledge, but also it's a center of excellence, which means that we will be significantly trying to improve our knowledge and understanding on these issues using evidence or generating new evidence, and then also generating new intervention programs to help address this issue. Yes? And then that's why the economists do much better job. I'm probably much biased than probably many other fields. Okay.
Thank you very much, Prof. Asad, Prof. Jane, and Prof. Asti for. Right. Yeah, I think I need to use this one. I'm sorry, I kind of move forward a little bit. But yeah, for a little bit of your information, so I invited my students from the development economics class, so which is exactly what this public lecture is all about. So Professor just mentioned earlier that it is your job as the future economist to provide evidence, build knowledge, and improve your knowledge, and build that policy that can the techniques that are existing right now, you can apply that to various topics. So that's your job for the future economist. I think that's very inspiring for our students as well. But we will see whether they pay attention or not. I think this is the real the real opportunity for you guys to kind of ask further about Professor Asad, Professor Chin, and Professor Asti's work on this violence against women, and also from Professor Asad's presentation of his paper. And it's the truth of time, and we'll see how many of my students will ask questions. But anyway, I will also open for the other audience, both who are attending our sessions offline here with us and also online, and maybe the committee can help me because I couldn't see the Zoom whether there's questions or not. So I think I would like to open for our first session. We still got plenty of time for the Q&A. So yes, one. Is there any one else too? Right, women, another women. Right. So we'll have for the first session. One from us with the black shirt, and then the other one with the brown t-shirt. So I would like you to introduce yourself, and so that our professors can know from which department.
Okay, thank you, Professor. Such an interesting presentation and insightful too. My name is Asadul from Department of Economics, Faculty of Economics, Universitas Germany. I have one question, and maybe can be answered by all of you. That the question is about who should be responsible, who should be truly responsible for providing costs to improve the welfare of refugees, especially for improving the welfare of mothers and their children. And the second question is for Professor Islam. I interesting to your research. My question is, what is the main challenges to do this research? Since there's a lot of challenges that you must face to do this research. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So I think we gathered all the questions and we will answer them. Thank you, Professor Asadul, for your great paper. I will have attention for your paper. Introduce me. My name is Diva, or maybe you can call me Queen, because Diva is a synonym for Queen in Indonesia. You know that the conflict in Myanmar has been going on for a very long time, and my question is, what if this conflict continues for maybe several years later? What will happen to the mental health and child development of refugees in the future? And then, is there any further connection regarding mental health and child development for Bangladeshi residents around the refugees area? Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you, Deepa. So I guess anyone would like to answer that? Who's responsible for the cost of refugees?
You know, you ask a difficult question to an economist, because this question should be asked to politicians. Okay. And in economics, we actually don't go much to the normative judgment. We do analysis based on the positive analysis. Okay. So what it means is that we provide evidence, and the politicians use the evidence sometimes for their own benefit, and sometimes they don't use the evidence because that goes against them. Okay? So in this case, I don't have any answer who is going to bear the burden, but it's a problem, and the Bangladesh should not be the only one who should be paying the price, actually. So that's the and it's a problem for the world, and the world should pay somehow. If we had an ideal world, then we would not be in this situation. But because of this problem going on, and considering the Bangladesh cannot really afford this kind of large goods, because of the socio-economic situation, and that's why you see that situation of the camp is not really that good, actually, because simply the people who are living there are not really living a life that even you can imagine a people living in Islam. Okay? So the second part is In the camp, or is it generally?
What challenges is it for the refugee in the camp, or what?
In the camp. So the main challenge for them is now actually repatriation, either to the place where they want to go and feel safe, and that is not happening. And we all know, I mean, it's going now beyond my talk actually, my disciplinary talk. But the Myanmar situation is not really good now, and so they would not be happy to go back, and we should not force them to go back. So it's a long-term situation. Ultimately, we don't know yet, depending on the situation in Myanmar and also our state world. And given that there are so many events in Ukraine or the Gadjah conflict that is happening, so there are no attention from the leaders to the other situations. So unfortunately, the situation in prospects for the refugees that are living in Bangladesh or even elsewhere are not looking that great.
And the next question will be about the future of mental health or harmful content.
I think I will request Jen to actually answer this question.
I'm sure we'll each have an opinion on that. The plight of refugees is really a world challenge. And as Islam said, most of them end up in poor countries, that they're fleeing poverty and maltreatment and discrimination and war. They're ending up often in a poorly resourced country. So I think this is a responsibility of better resourced countries to provide resettlement services. Most high-income countries do this, but not at an adequate scale. So our country is a host country for people who are refugees, and they are resettled and they have access gradually to some of the services, including specialist mental health services that they need. I think the plight of refugees has profoundly harmful effects on mental health. And that I'm very impressed to see how this low-cost, peer-led program was beneficial. And it's that kind of model, I think, that we have to try and replicate and enable people to participate in where they are. Because if we wait for them to get to see an extensive specialist psychiatrist in a high-income country, that's not going to happen for most. So I think we have to presume that every person who's a refugee has heightened psychological needs. Everybody needs the practical things that make a difference, so security of housing, of food, of clean water, of access to healthcare. But in addition to that, this opportunity for psychological support through shared problem solving, shared planning, shared commitment to their children, even in this terrible predicament, to me holds a lot of promise for what we might be able to do and should advocate for.
I wouldn't be able to add much more, at least based on my own research background. We all know that being an immigrant is challenging. Being a forced immigrant is particularly challenging, and particularly in a set situation like what we heard about today with massive resource constraints. It is challenging for a number of reasons. My own research on migrants has focused on Australia, and the closest evidence that I can bring into this discussion comes from forced migrants in Australia. We have a longitudinal survey of refugees in Australia, And what we have done is to look at the various states of integration into Australian society. So some people have Australian-based friends, some people only interact within their community, some people are proficient in English, others are not. Some people are entirely assimilated over time, some people are not. And what we find is that these different degrees of integration into the society actually have implications for people's subjective well-being and mental health. And this is just one of the aspects by which this state of, being an immigrant, especially a refugee, may matter for mental health. So I would entirely agree that adding this nuance to the discussion, but I otherwise agree with anything that my colleagues said.
So any evidence regarding the mental health for the residents surrounding the refugee camp?
So in the host community. So it's the people in Bangladesh. So there are now a lot of complaints from the host communities because of some of the situations that probably would otherwise even happen, but they are blaming now to the refugees because anything that goes wrong could actually it be due to the other circumstances, but now that the refugee problems are there, so they are blaming the refugee population. But having said that, it's a 1 million population living in a congested area, and the neighborhood, the host people in Bangladesh have resource constraints. So and exploiting the same kind of resources and utilizing the resources means that there are trade-offs actually. Okay, so and we cannot really separate how much is due to this happening due to this kind of refugee settlement there actually. But it also offers an opportunities for host communities to integrate with people from other cultures and like. I live in Australia for the last 18 years. I grew up in Bangladesh, and so I have to integrate but also at the same time, most of the Australian population are immigrants, right? So there are a lot of things happening. I can blame anything that goes wrong. I can blame other people, but it doesn't help actually. So what my point is, the host communities are also going through a lot of difficult circumstances, but the opportunities are there because the international communities and others, donors, initially spend a lot of resources to help these refugees, and so there is some spillovers that you can think about go to the host communities. Now, with the passage of time, the international communities have now focused on something else, like after the Ukraine war, they went away from this refugees camp, and so there are now less resources available for them, and the refugee people do not have opportunity to walk outside legally. So that means they are under severe constraint, and that might create actually a lot of tension between, because they might also want to go out and try to get something out by somehow because they are restricted. So it's a very complex problem, and the solution depends on where they ultimately settle in. But a resource poor country like Bangladesh cannot be the solution for the resettlement.
Right, so hopefully that answers the two questions that we have in the first session. So I'm going to open our second session. One from here. 1, 2, 3. Right, and this is how I like it. Right, so I don't have to prepare the questions myself. So we have four audience to ask questions in our second sessions from the floor. But do we have questions online? Yeah. Okay. Right. So we can go one from the right-hand side, and then you, Amy, and two other audience.
Thank you, Qisha. Please allow me to introduce myself. I was a student of this faculty many years ago. I was a student of Quarina. I've just finished my Ph.D. from the University of Sydney, so it's nice to have a face from down under here. I've got questions. I'm interested in the studies that you did. I think it's very inspiring, and especially because it's a women-driven project. I find it really interesting. I'm interested in learning about the intervention methods that you did, the 44 sessions, and it's very cheap. And these mothers, are they professionals or are they trained particularly for this subject? I think if we could learn from this, and it will be really impactful. I mean, in Indonesia, mental health is also very urgent. So I'm interested to know how you design the intervention, and do you have like a special training for these mothers to be helpers to other mothers? And then the second one is about the level of randomization that you did. If I'm not mistaken, it was done at the block level. Would you enlighten us why would you do it at the block? What would happen if you do it at the individual level? I mean, would that make any difference or not? And the last one, I would like to know what are the indicators that you use to measure the mental health of the mothers and children. Thank you. I really appreciate what you did at the centers. I mean, if I was younger, I would definitely follow up on your offer to do the PhD on that field. But yeah, but I'm working on it. Oh no. One more. Thank you. I really enjoyed this afternoon session. Thank you. Sorry, your name? Oh yeah, my name is Vika. I work at the research institute here in Yogyakarta. So we work a lot on the financial inclusion, MSc. We work on disability as well, and also now we are looking at how we can make a difference in mental health in Indonesia. So, thank you.
Thank you, Vika. So if the audience don't mind, I think I would like to change the game a little bit. So questions and an answer. Otherwise, I think I'm kind of like behind in noting your questions, especially coming questions from one audience. So if the professors don't mind.
I'm happy to answer the question. So the three questions, right?
The intervention method, whether the mother, it's very cost effective, whether the mothers are being taught to.
Yeah, it's a very good question actually. These three questions are very good. So the first question, this is the resource for saving. So we needed to do something better. We were thinking about scaling up in the whole refugee camps. So we have to be practical that that we can actually scale it up. So even in the whole Bangladesh, there are only a handful of psychologists and psychiatrists. So what we did is we hired psychologists to develop this content, and we recruited the university graduates, the college graduates who have degrees in education or psychology or educational psychology. They were trained up by the psychologists, and then they were assisted by what we call Mada volunteers, the people in the camp who are also refugees, who have certain level of education, who can assist and communicate well, because the language and other cultural barriers are there. So basically, this is, and the volunteers actually work free, almost free of cost. And so that's how we did this. So in terms of your question about randomization and whether it's a cluster randomized control program, and the typical problem when you have individual level randomization is spillovers. So the control group might be affected by the program. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we contain the spillovers, and we have limited our intervention within that cluster, so we could compare the group that received and the group that did not receive. So So in order to minimize the spillover, this is the way, and because it's a very congested setting, you can do individual level randomization if individuals do not interact with each other. But in this setting, they interact a lot with each other.
The measure, how to measure the mental health.
Oh, so these are all standard measures developed by people like Jane and others, actually the American Psychiatrist Association. We have all explained in our paper. I shared the paper. Did I share the paper? So the paper has an appendix, probably more than 100 pages. All the measures are explained and how we actually created the index. And because these measures, each of them includes several portions, and the psychiatrist has developed this. We did not innovate anything in terms of the measurement. We adopted in our context, but we just basically use the same measure, but language and other things have been adopted there.
All right, thank you. Do you have follow-up questions on that? All right, thank you. The second question is from Ibu Annie, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Qisha. It is just a following question from Pika, I think. This is about the how do you measure the outcome for the children? Can you consider about the cohort analysis for the children? I mean, in the picture you show that the children is below 5 years, and maybe do you also consider about the above 5 years, because maybe the effect will be different between the young children and also older children. And then I show that you also done an online survey. Is there any different measurement for the mental health? Because usually using the self-reported or observed directly to the locations. So maybe it will be different measurements. Maybe could you please just give a little bit explanation?
No, very good question. Actually, what happened is due to COVID, we had no other option but to go to online in this case phone-based. So the intervention had to go to phone-based, and also the inline happened during the peak of the COVID. So there was no way we could go in person and actually do all the measurements. And in terms of the self-reported, because these are young children 0 to 2 year old, so everything was actually reported by mother. We asked mothers about this, and some of those things are also to observe behavior of the children. But these are standard measure again developed by early childhood experts, and then we just adopted in our context. This is pretty standard measure, and these are for the age group of the children. They is well established and validated. The point about whether to focus on the younger versus little older children. Anything that you can intervene, early childhood literature says that the earlier you can actually intervene, the better outcome it could be. So because we needed to concentrate in one group or the other, and we thought that giving intervention for mothers and these young children they have, so we should expect any benefit that we can expect should be maximum for this age group. But we have a separate program focusing on the children who are 2 to 6 years old in early childhood settings. Or their mothers are not that much involved, and I have a paper on that actually, focusing on that. But we do see actually that because these are really poor setting, anything that we give will have impact.
What can we add on that?
I'm very interested in all of this. My own work has predominantly been in rural Vietnam, where interestingly we've done a similar kind of intervention facilitated by a local women's group. The one thing that I'd like to add is this really important question of how do you measure psychological states across a cultural and language boundary. And I think in general we cannot use just directly a questionnaire developed in North America or England and presume that it has the same sensitivity and specificity in a setting where often the idiomatic language doesn't translate directly, where people are asked about change from a usual state. Are you feeling worse than usual or better than usual? But if your life is chronically difficult, you might say no to that question, but you're still experiencing great distress. And I think the cut-off score to detect clinically significant symptoms tends to be much lower in low-income countries because of differences in emotional literacy. That people might not have a big vocabulary to describe their emotions. So there's a common questionnaire called the Edinburgh Postnatal Depression Scale used to measure depression among women who've recently given birth. In high-income settings, the cut-off score is 12. In rural Vietnam, it's 3. So if we use 12, we would miss most of the people who have a significant mental health burden. So really important question, and I'm sure it's one that people here are sensitive to, but don't just take the questionnaire from England and presume it will work in the same way.
You know, that's very important, and that's why we need validation in the local context. And these things have been validated by the psychologists in Bangladesh, and we just adapted. And the second part is the cutoff. Even after that, you need because what is normal in that context might look very abnormal in Australia, because you know people are spending the whole lifetime trauma, anxiety, depression. Anything that was a little bit better for them is very good. But even in absolute sense, it's very bad.
I think that's a great point here, because economic development is all about context. You can't apply the same policies to all countries, so we need to look at the context. Yeah, and take that as a note, guys. Right. Actually, I have a follow-up questions, Professor, regarding the intervention during COVID. So I was wondering during your presentation whether we could expect some of the responses or maybe some of the results was actually a result or an additional results due to the stress of COVID, like where they might be, stuck in their camp, and could that be like something added into the mental health response in your country?
Yeah, because we have treatment and control group, where control group did not receive, and because COVID affected treatment group equally and control group equally. So our results are not driven by any other factors like COVID.
Right, thank you. Right, so could you please raise your hand, like the two other audiences? Okay, I thought there were two, but yeah. Okay. Please state your name. Okay, one more with the yeah. I'll get to you after this one.
My name is Dayu. I'm from Economics Department at Monash University. My question is, as this is a regional issue, why the Asian body doesn't take this Rohingya problems as regional problems? As we know, of course, the refugees burden to the whole country budgeting. Why? Maybe there is some joint endowment, but why this doesn't happen right now? Take the problem into ASEAN common problem. Thank you.
Why is it the host country problem, not the regional host country problem? Like, for example, Indonesia is an Asian problem, not only for Indonesian problem taking refugees from Rohingya.
Well, it's, I think the countries that are more welcoming are the ones, of course, they want to go, right? And in this setting, like the Rohingya people are in Malaysia, in Indonesia, in Bangladesh, and perhaps also in Thailand as well. And Bangladesh, because of the physical proximity, they, I think a lot more of them are in Bangladesh. We cannot really ignore this fact. Every refugees, even Ukraine refugees, went to the Europe, and then they realized that refugee is a problem actually. They didn't realize when the Rohingya refugees came out because they thought it's not their problem. So you have to create unfortunate. It is unfortunate that they have to realize long later. But it's a refugee problem is a world problem that we need to recognize this actually. And unless we try to address this as a world community or regional community, is going to create more problems. And we have to be aware about that, and that's why the international community needs to be more, like more careful in terms of when things are going wrong, they should not see it as a problem of the country or particular region. They should see it even when things like Afghanistan war and recently when the US troops actually withdrew from Afghanistan, there were a lot of people who wanted to flee because of the Taliban's fear of Taliban actually, and we all saw that actually. The international community, particularly the developed countries, did not really pay attention too much actually. And again, they thought it is the problem of Afghanistan, problem due to Taliban, but that actually was completely different when Ukraine refugees went to Europe, and they felt that actually they something close to their heart, and then they need to actually do something.
Right, thank you. Does that answer your questions? Right. Please, one more from the floor. And hopefully we got some questions from online.
Good afternoon. My name is Kamsa, and I'm one of the undergraduates of Economics Department. And so, before I give you my question, I'll put into context first. In the refugee community, I read sometimes traditional gender roles and societal expectations often shape the experiences of impacting their mental health and in various ways. And so my question is, in what ways do gender dynamics within refugee communities influence the expression of mental health among women, and how can interventions be made to address the specific gender vulnerabilities? That's all. Thank you.
Gender. So it's about gender dynamics.
Yes, it's the question.
How do gender dynamics impact the expression or expectation? I'm sorry. Expression in the refugee.
Okay, so if I understood it correctly, so I mean, in Rohingya refugee camp, actually most of the people living in the camp, the children and the women actually, and a lot of men actually either they died because of the fight, or they actually went to some other places and to have them to settle, or because they could not bring the children and women to live there actually. So I believe you will see more men in Indonesia than in Bangladesh. That's because they are probably here to try to settle in another country and on the way, or either settling here, but they could not bring their women and the children together with them. And so it has important implication in terms of, again, the gender-based violence, the violence against women that we are talking actually, and also because of the higher concentration of women in the camp, they might face actual other problems in the camp because the fewer men, they might exploit the women more than actually. If they are men all around actually. So the women and children have two problems. One is their men are not around and they need to survive on their own. And the second thing is there are other men who might exploit the weakness of these women in this way.
I think not much to add there, but in general, I think from the literature, what we know is that situations of stress can often revive the traditional gender norms. So going beyond the sort of immediate impact that Asadul was referring to, there is evidence that suggests that especially extended states of this kind of society-wide distress through exposure to society-wide violence can also just revive the general norms, which can then have longer-term impacts. And of course, all of these have some implications for women's mental health.
Just to add to that, in these extreme circumstances where it's very difficult to generate an income, the revival of the traditional norms means that women are left with an enormous burden, caregiving, trying to maintain some sort of household, especially for dependent children, and with no income. And this really, I think, exacerbates the mental health burden that they're facing.
All right, thank you. So I think we do still have a little bit of time. I would like to invite more audience and more students to raise questions. Or do you have questions online? Not yet. Audience? Right, we have 2 questions. All right. Since we're talking about women, so ladies first. The one from the row and the gentleman at the back. Right, thank you.
I'll introduce myself. My name is Gadjah. I'm one of the undergraduates from the economics major. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening. My question is, if this program, the play program, had been implemented for non-refugees, so the context would be, for example, in metropolitan cities in developing country, would the result be different? And if it is different, then how significant would it be? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is a specific setting, the refugee context, and in our randomized control trial, the good thing about randomized control trial, the results are what they are. So what it means is that whatever you find, you can clearly say that if you do this in this study, in the study context, then you will get this. What it cannot do is generalizability of the results in other settings, actually, because the context differs and you have different set of people, so that's why it's not really easy to generalize the results. But you can say that, okay, we have done this intervention in the setting of the poor socioeconomic context, so we could try and see this intervention have probably potential in settings where you can see some similarities, and then you can have another trial or 2, okay, to understand a deeper understanding of this context before you have some confidence about the scalability, a generalizability of the results. So I would not just jump on based on the findings from one study, But this gives us an important way to think about how to implement the program in similar settings, or even in different settings, what are the constraints we need to think about. I know, a lot of economists like to generalize beauty. But being an academic our duty is actually to be very clear and conscious about what we can say and what we cannot say. And our training in economics, particularly, is such that actually we want to be very focused on things that we are doing. So that's why I said a positive statement that whatever evidence we generate, we can tell that this is what happened. But if you want to generalize, then you should actually replicate in a wider setting, in different contexts, and then you should be able to tell a broader story about different states of intervention. Okay. So having said that, there are programs that economists have used using randomized control in different countries or in different settings, and they seem to have worked well. But you need to understand that, okay, how this program will work in different ways. They are not really copy and paste. Okay, whatever you can do here in Indonesia, you're not going to translate everything in Vietnam or in Bangladesh. Actually. So you need to adapt in that context and then try to implement, see how it goes. Actually. And then you can say that, okay, if we do this kind of things in the settings, this is likely to happen.
That's interesting. Because perhaps students are interested if this kind of experiment is conducted within the academic setting, whether taking a certain course perhaps or certain curriculum will give them more mental health distress or mental distress.
I actually,
talking from experience.
I actually have was in Bangladesh, especially during COVID, a lot of university students could not go, and during this university life, we make a lot of our friends, boys, girls, boyfriend, girlfriend, and everything goes on, right? And that didn't happen for many children actually. So they felt a lot of frustration, depression, and all of those things went on. So we are trying to do a kind of a mental health intervention, focusing on the university students to actually, through the counseling services, actually, we could not evaluate. We did intervention. But the way RCD happened, I was not confident that it was real RCD. So it mixed up with many things. But this is a real problem actually, and we all know that mental health problem is not just confined to the refugee community. Here, I mean, we all have mental health issues actually, more or less actually. So the problem is how severe it is and where to actually put your resources in terms of the severity of the problem actually. So that's it.
Thank you. Do you have a paper on that? Was that your maybe our students are interested.
I can send you something actually, but it's not really a good paper.
Alright, thank you. So the severity not only in poverty but in mental health. So I believe we have one more audience, and I think it will be the last one because I think I have the privilege to ask the last question as a closing. Yes, please.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I am Michael Mamida from the Philippines, and I study human rights and democratization under FESIPL. I'm currently writing the Jugunyanku system and the politics of memory, which is one of the most forgotten chapter in Indonesia as well. But you can give me scholarship to do. Yeah. But I'm quite curious to the politics of language that we used to employ, because there is always this parity or this data can change with just the usage of language. I'm quite curious, how do you employ the language? Thank you so much.
I'm pleased to have the first turn, but my colleagues, language is absolutely crucial. I think it conveys so much about the stereotypes we each bring to our work, including our research work. And so I'm absolutely certain that we have to be very thoughtful about the language we use. If I could just use one illustrative example of how I try to get my colleagues in a health profession to change their language. Women's unpaid care work is not dignified with the language of work. There are no occupational health and safety regulations when the home is your workplace. But one of the things that makes a very big difference to mental health is to have that work recognised and honoured. So I really dislike when a health professional asks a woman who has been up all night caring for a sick baby, trying to run a household with a toddler and no income at the moment, when are you going back to work, or do you work? Because they convey the very clear message that the health professional in a position of power does not regard her labour as worthwhile work. If she can just shift a little bit and say, what is your work? Often the response is, oh, I don't work, because women embody these stereotypes. It's the opportunity to say, you're working incredibly hard, everything you're doing is enormously valuable. Are there things that could be done to assist your work? So you will each have examples, but I'm absolutely convinced that the language we use and how we frame research questions, how we interpret the data, how we practice in our different disciplinary fields is an incredibly important and powerful tool.
So if I want to add in this context of mental health, we have to be really careful about the word mental health, because in many settings, mental health is a stigma. Okay? And you do not want to say that you have mental health problems, okay? Because that will create even further mental health issues. Okay? So we never use this terminology in the setting. It is for our own consumption purpose. When you go there, you talk about social well-being, socio-economic well-being. Okay? Use a more general word, so that is neutral for everybody.
I guess I can try to take this in a slightly different direction. So I've done some work on language, but approaching it in a slightly different way to it. So in economics, we try to come up with some good markers of, in the context of gender, for example, some good markers for culture, but it's not so easy to come up with some markers. So one thing that people have done alongside myself, and this takes inspiration actually from social psychology, from a sort of theory, rather controversial theory called linguistic relativity, is that the structure of the language that you speak actually affects the way you think. So what I have done in some of my work and others have done in their work is to actually come up with markers of gender intensity in the language. So one way you can do this in a number of ways. So one way you can do this in is to actually capture the structural features of a language that are gendered. For example, in English you have Qisha distinction. In my native language, Armenian, you don't have. The language is pretty much gender neutral. In some other languages, like Arabic or Hebrew, you have much more gender. You also have gender in the second letter. Pronoun, second person pronoun, and so forth. So you can come up with some measures of gender intensity of language. And if you try to then link this with, actual outcomes of women controlling for some other, features like ethnicity, so trying to come up with observationally very similar people who otherwise are different in the language that they speak, seems that this matters. And traditionally, the feminist scholars have argued that gender language is detrimental to gender equality because it makes gender relevant in settings where it shouldn't be, and that's at the heart of discrimination. So I thought it should be slightly different sort of line of reasoning here, but perhaps has some especially
All right, thank you. So yeah, I'm going to use my privilege for one last question. It's actually directed towards Professor Asif. And so just like Professor Asad mentioned, so mental health is a word that, well, it's just started being popular somehow. Right? It used to be like a stigma and it's still taboo in many settings or cultures. But another terminology that's still sensitive is violence against women. So I think I'm interested from your presentations, is it an ongoing project, and how reliable that we can measure, or how can we actually get the data that women are being, some sort of suffering of violence, because it's a very sensitive issue, especially in the settings of Indonesia, where we're very much a patriarchy system, where, like you mentioned, if I'm being abused perhaps by my husband, it's not abuse, it might be love language, right? So, yeah, I'm interested more, and if you could just elaborate a little more, is it an ongoing project for Indonesia? And the most important thing, when can we get the data, and will it be like available freely? Because one of the biggest issues for development economies in Indonesia is the data, especially on such topics.
Thank you very much for the question. I'll do the start, and I hope my colleagues can add to it. So I think that's a really important question. And I think there are a number of layers in this question that make the task of actually capturing the prevalence of gender-based violence quite tricky. One of it is in the sort of understanding of what constitutes violence. So we'll be building on the WHO protocol, which provides a very precise definition. So rather than asking the woman, have you experienced violence, there's specific reference to specific experiences. For example, has your husband pushed you, or specific. So that contributes to lack of ambiguity. However, if we go a little bit further to sort of less commonly understood and defined forms of violence, then that's really something that we need to give a lot of thought on. On top of that, we know that when you try to capture violence through asking the woman on their experience or on her experiences, there are a lot of issues there associated with stigma and shame and threat, and all of these are considerations that we need to keep in mind. And in the survey setting, again, we have to come up with some approaches that would maximize the sense of privacy for a woman so that some of these concerns are mitigated. There are also some indirect, more experimental ways of trying to sort of gauge how much, the prevalence of violence. So we'll have to, give a lot of thought to this. But this is a space that is, sort of open for sort of real contributions there, because we know that there are definitional challenges, there are challenges in true reporting. In terms of our sort of timeline, I guess, so this is we have a 7-year program. We are aspiring to do at least 2 waves of survey. They're closely linked to the field experiments that we will be implementing, and the sort of the field experiment design will sort of fit into the way that the surveys will also be structured and conducted. At the moment, we are still designing and planning, so it's a bit hard for us to give sort of sense of timeline, but we very much look forward to being able to share our findings and really we all of us, aspire to publish our research in good journals, but ultimately the ambition is to share the knowledge, translate it, and just really try to see if we can make an impact on the world.
All right, thank you very much. So lastly, from the 3 professors that we have, so I have a quote actually from one of our textbooks that we use in the class for economic development. It's by Michael Futher. Since we're talking about women, Futher mentioned, as I quote, women is the engine of development.
Yes, they are actually, and there is no doubt about it. And that's why we see the countries that have developed, there are more women in a more progressive way. And so if you have, there are roughly half of the population men and half population women. You cannot really leave behind the half of the population and progress your country. that will not happen. So if a country needs to develop, it needs to pay attention to women. And the second, I just wanted to add, as we said that in terms of the violence against women initiative, there are many ways you can get involved from now on until the next 7 years. We have this CEVAW affiliate. So you just fill up a small form. We can send you the link. You can fill up the form and you can become an affiliate. The benefit of being affiliate is you get to know everything what is happening. Plus, if you want to get involved as a researcher, there will be opportunities of discussion between researchers here and our chief investigators, and I'm sure there will be no open from any of us to have discussion and see that what the mutual interest in Myanmar. So, and because one of our focus is in Indonesia, and we would like to build and expand our research beyond what our Center of Excellence can now actually offer, and we want to extend and get even more funding, more resources, and we want to work with you. And one of my purpose actually to come here and to talk is to think beyond the Center of Excellence, current set of projects that we are doing. Of course, and this is related to the gender violence against women, and we have done a lot of work in this area. So if you are interested, please email or contact us. We'll be very happy to discuss and see where we can collaborate.
Any minimum qualifications in education for being an affiliate?
No. So I use a lot of my students as a kind of, my students are actually great collaborators because they help me a lot in terms of the work that I cannot do, because they spend a lot of time on data, on checking everything minor to quiz. At this stage, if I spend, I will be spending my entire time just on research project. So students can learn through this process. I have done this in my earlier stages of life. So students have, these are the ways to learn, and for students, just don't think about being Prof or something, just think about it as a learning process. And you will, if I get this opportunity in my earlier stages of life, I would be really grateful, because the way this, you have the opportunity to work with leading scholars in the field, and anything that you learn will have a longer term impact, and you have longer life horizon than me. So you can gain more than me by involving in this process.
All right, thank you, Professor Asad. I will move on to Professor G. Gender is the engine of the dialogue.
I have absolutely no doubt that this is a true statement. And so it's in all our interests to enable women to participate fully. And to do that, they need to live in gender equitable environments, culturally, socially, politically, economically. And their health, including their mental health, needs to be protected. Violence is one of the biggest risk factors, mental health problems experienced by women. So these two things are linked. If we enable them to be eliminated, women will truly be able to be the engine of development.
All right, thank you, Professor Jane. Professor?
Thanks for that question. I think we should just care about gender equity on its own right. But there seems to be a good body of evidence to suggest that once empowered, women contribute to decision making that is better for the societies. For example, let's take the case of climate change action. We see a lot of women who drive this change. For example, we see a lot of women leaders in countries which adopt more pro-environmental action and stringent policies. I that is the case is unclear. It could be because of the traditional gender norms in societies that they have shaped women's preferences in a way that contributes to some of these decisions that seem to make the society better overall.
All right, thank you very much. Can I have a big round of applause for our three professors? Thank you, Professor Nasa, Professor G, and Professor Asti. In Indonesia, we always address by the first name, so you don't mind. Right? That's I've always been addressing you guys. So, everyone, I think that's the end of our public lecture. So, we have covered lots of topics from gender, migrants, social well-being, and I think we have heard about the importance of educating, if not making the mothers happy, because there's an intergenerational happiness, at least within the context of Rohingya refugee camp. But I would also like to recalling Professor Asad's message about building and improving knowledge are our duty as an economist, and also generating evidence to provide the cost-effective policies using the data set and available techniques and applying that wide variety of topics. And also, I think Professor Jim also highlighting the importance of looking at the context, especially when we're talking about developing versus developed countries, because different country settings needs different intervention. And lastly, the three professors agreed that one of the engines of development, if not development economics, are women. So thank you very much, and I will give back to Dave. And yeah, I'm signing off as moderator. Thank you. Oh, we have another ceremonial address.
Okay, thank you very much to Qisha, who has facilitated the sessions very well. And also thank you very much for the professors on stage that has shared with us those insightful sessions. And before we end this guest lecture, I'd like to take a moment to express our gratitude towards our speakers and also our moderator. And I will invite you and Celestian to join us on stage to hand over the certificate and the gifts. Okay, first of all, we invite Professor Asad to step forward. Okay, really? Okay, for documentation. One, two, three. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you, Professor Asad. And also, we invite Professor Nafisa Kalian and also Professor Fisher to step forward and receive this gift of ours.
Thank you. Thank you.
And this is for you. Thank you very much.
On the behalf of Equitas and also Economics Lab, I would also like to recognize the excellence of our moderator, who has skillfully guided our discussions tonight at the event.
Special request.
Okay, thank you, Bu Eni.
Thank you.
And once again, let's give a round of applause towards our wonderful speaker and moderator. Okay, so we will have documentation together. So the coming.
Go here.
Group picture.
Do we go here?
Going to take a group picture.
Miring. Naik ke atas. One, two, three, and then 1, 2,
Freestyle.
Okay. 1, 2.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the committee for the commencing our moments together. And as the time already passed 4 p.m. and the series of SinarKU event already comes to an end, we would like to thank all attendees who have participated actively in today's event. We hope that the knowledge we have learned together will be useful and motivate us to dive deep into development issues further. Before we close, I would like to remind you that participants are entitled to an e-certificate if they attend the event as of the end and fill out the attendance and feedback forms that is presented on the slide above.
Second floor.
I, Qisha, the master of ceremony today and the representative of the committee, officially close the public lecture of Equitas at SinarKU this afternoon. Thank you again for being here. We wish you a great day and see you next time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.